I came home early with a ring in my pocket and found my fiancée on my best friend's lap. She said I got fat, ate junk, and lost all ambition. He still owed me 5 grand. So I destroyed their lives with one move. Last I saw her, she was begging at a train station. No ID, no future, nothing. I wasn't planning anything extravagant. No rooftop violinist, no skywriting, no over-the-top YouTube proposal. Just donuts. Box of 6 from our favorite spot on Maple Avenue. I even asked the guy to sneak a tiny velvet box under the chocolate-glazed one. Dumb? Maybe. But it felt like me, quiet, thoughtful, a little awkward, but honest. I got off work early that day. Took the long route home, humming like an idiot. I was thinking of all the ways I might say it. Marry me felt so theatrical. Erin always hated theatrics. Maybe just, let's keep eating donuts for life? She'd laugh. Maybe cry. We'd hug. It'd be simple and weird and perfect. But none of that happened. I opened the apartment door, and something was off. Not just quiet, wrong. There was this low, breathy sound coming from the bedroom. I paused. Thought she might be crying or watching something on her phone. Then I heard a whisper. Not hers. Then hers. I didn't knock. I don't know why. I just pushed the door open and froze. She was straddling him. Her hands were on his chest. His shirt was open. Her lips were on his neck. Both of them half undressed, tangled up like they didn't have a care in the world. Him. Chris. My best friend since college. In my bedroom. On my side of the bed. With the woman I was going to propose to. The box in the donut bag felt suddenly radioactive. I dropped it without realizing. It hit the floor with a dull thud. They both turned to me, slowly. Like I was the one interrupting their moment. No guilt. No panic. Just this dead stare. I think I just blinked. Like my brain hadn't caught up yet. Erin stood up, not rushing to cover herself or explain. Just straightened her hair and looked at me like I was a disappointment she'd finally found the words for. Then she said it. You seriously thought I'd marry you? Look at yourself. She didn't stop there. Said I was fat. Boring. Living in some fantasy where loyalty mattered and people like me got happy endings. She even laughed. Said Chris was a real man. Said she was leaving with him. That I should deal with it. I didn't yell. Not even once. I think that made it worse for them. I just stood there, listening like I was studying a language I never thought I'd hear from someone I trusted. Then I walked up to Chris. He tried to say something, I don't know what. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I didn't punch him. Didn't scream. I just said, I didn't know you were this rotten. Thanks for taking off the mask. And to Erin, I hope he doesn't bore you as fast as you threw me out. I left, closed the door without slamming it. And that's when something strange happened. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I didn't text friends or get drunk or post some vague quote online about betrayal. I just stood still. And in that stillness, something inside me died. And something sharper took its place. That night, I erased my social media. Deleted old emails. Burned every photo, digital and physical. I archived my entire past like it was a dead project. A week later, I introduced the world to Paul Grayson. Paul had a clean smile, expensive hobbies, a vague past in early-stage crypto assets, and a fake but beautiful office backdrop for video calls. He lived in Austin, traveled a lot, had strong opinions about emerging markets and female-focused branding. He also had a very specific target audience. I created 2 accounts, one for Paul the investor, one for Paul the mentor. Then I went fishing. Chris was easy, still posting selfies at the gym, flexing in bathroom mirrors, adding hashtags like #grindmode and #hustlerlife. I messaged him from Paul's investor profile. Said I was looking for a new partner. Someone with charisma, street sense. Asked if he'd ever considered starting something. Crypto's hot. You've got the look. We should talk. He replied in 10 minutes. Erin took a bit longer. She was quieter online. But I found her through an old makeup tutorial account she'd once tried to launch. Still linked to her inactive Twitter. I slid in as Paul the founder. Told her I was launching a new line of sustainable wellness products and was looking for a confident, relatable face to help redefine the modern brand. She loved that phrase. Said she'd always wanted to build something meaningful. Said she just needed the right door to open. I told her I had a door, and I'd hold it open. Over the next week, I played them like piano keys. With Chris, I talked about blockchain, white label fintech, early buy-in equity. He didn't understand a word, but he kept nodding along like he did. I told him he could get in on the ground floor with just a small personal investment. $5K, and you're not just an investor. You're a co-owner. With Erin, it was all buzzwords. Empowerment. Uplifting narratives. Brand identity. I told her she was exactly what the company needed. Fresh, real, magnetic. $3K gets us through the first campaign. You'll be the face of the brand. They both bit. I watched the payments come in. Chris sent his first, loud and proud. Bragged about it on Instagram later. Big moves only. Erin was more careful. She waited 2 days, then messaged me nervously. I sent it. Just tell me what comes next. What came next? Silence. Website. Gone. Paul. Vanished. Support email. Bounced. The LinkedIn profile. Deleted. I watched their online panic grow. They tried reaching out. Erin messaged 7 times in 1 hour. Chris called Paul twice. Left a voicemail. Bro, let's talk. I just want to make sure it's all good. All good. We were just getting started. First, I created a throwaway Reddit account. Then another. And another. One account posted screenshots exposing a scam. Another reposted it with hashtags. One claimed to be a victim. One said they knew someone who got ripped off by a couple named Erin and Chris. I even photoshopped fake DMs. The post made it to a few subreddits. Comments piled in. Internet detectives did the rest. Then came the email to Chris's workplace. Short, formal, and devastating. Dear HR, please be advised that one of your employees may be involved in an online financial scam. Attached are screenshots and public accusations currently spreading across several platforms. We believe this warrants internal review. 2 days later, Chris was fired. Erin, I went for the foundation. I printed the screenshots. Wrote a short letter. Your daughter manipulated someone, took his money, and contributed to a fraudulent scheme. Hope this is who you raised her to be. I mailed it to her parents' home address. She never knew how it got there. All I know is that by the end of the week, they cut her off. Now we had the pieces in place. Financial collapse, public humiliation, and total isolation. And trust me, we weren't even at the worst part yet. But I'll save that for later. Because first, let's talk about what happens when two people who think they've won realize they're standing in the ruins of someone else's patience. After the scam had been fully executed, I expected some silence. Maybe they'd lie low, lick their wounds, figure out they'd been played. But what I didn't expect was just how quickly their lives started to unravel once the money disappeared. It didn't even take days, just hours. Chris began posting vague, slightly panicked stories on Instagram, asking if anyone had ever worked with a guy named Paul Grayson. One post showed a screenshot of Paul's now-deleted profile. Another was just black text on a white background that said, "Trust no one." Of course, no one knew what he meant. Not yet. Erin, on the other hand, went quiet. She sent a few desperate messages to the Minter account, pleading for an explanation. One read, "If this is some kind of misunderstanding, please just clarify. I trusted you." The irony didn't even sting me. I just sat back and watched it all sink in. But I wasn't done. I hadn't built a castle of lies just to vanish and let them walk away looking like clueless victims. No, this was about erosion, not collapse. I wanted their reputations to decay the same way trust does, slowly, then all at once. So I started where the internet always listens, with anonymous accounts. I posted stories on forums and small startup-related groups, saying Chris had been bragging about his startup equity while funneling other people's money into a scam. I attached doctored screenshots of his profile next to fake wire confirmations. Nothing that could be traced to me, but just enough to trigger the scent of a scandal. The next step was his job. Chris worked in sales at a mid-tier tech firm. Not flashy, but enough to make him feel important. I sent an anonymous email to their HR department. In it, I claimed to be a concerned acquaintance, warning them about a potential internal ethics breach. I included links to the anonymous posts and highlighted Chris's name. 2 days later, his LinkedIn went silent. 3 days after that, the updates started leaking in. A mutual friend posted something vague about opportunities ending when integrity does. Someone else commented, "Damn, karma hits fast." I didn't even have to lift a finger after that. The internet, once properly nudged, has a way of feeding on its own momentum. Erin's fall was quieter, but somehow even more satisfying. I didn't just want her to lose money. I wanted her to lose comfort. Stability. That smug sense of immunity she carried like perfume. So I printed every piece of fake evidence I had. The emails, the contracts, the proof of her involvement in something shady. Then I mailed it all, without a return address, to her parents. A handwritten note was attached, reading, "Your daughter used someone who loved her, lied, and helped ruin his life. You raised her to be better." Did it work? I knew enough about them to know that would land like a bomb. They were conservative, traditional, and utterly unforgiving when it came to appearances. And sure enough, within the week, Erin deleted every trace of family photos from her page. No holiday tags. No dinner selfies. It was like her last name got quietly wiped off the internet. Now, with no income, no job, and no family lifeline, Chris and Erin were left with only each other. Which, given the cracks already forming, was the worst thing that could have happened to them. I kept watching from a distance. They moved into a smaller apartment. Their old one had been in Erin's parents' name, and once the support dried up, the rent became impossible. Chris tried to freelance. Erin applied to marketing jobs, but the online rumor mill had poisoned most of her digital footprint. Within a month, Chris started drinking more. At first, it was casual. Weekend beers, maybe a whiskey to take the edge off. Then came the late mornings, missed interviews, and short temp gigs that ended early. Erin's posts became increasingly erratic. Long rants about fake friends and not knowing who to trust. At one point, she shared a quote about starting over alone and deleted it 10 minutes later. They weren't unraveling. They were already undone. One night, I heard through a mutual that things had gotten violent. Chris had thrown a glass during an argument. Erin screamed loud enough for the neighbors to call the police. He was taken in for a night. Nothing stuck legally, but the damage was done. From that point forward, even their silence felt radioactive. By the time winter rolled in, they were ghosts of who they used to be. Erin's hair, once always done, always polished, looked unwashed in her rare selfies. Her cheeks were hollow. She'd either lost a lot of weight or simply stopped caring about appearances. Chris looked worse. Puffy face, red eyes, posts that oscillated between denial and desperation. They weren't starting a life together. They were dragging each other down, clinging to whatever scraps of delusion they had left. And I was living well. Not lavishly, not out of some fake moral restraint, but because watching this unfold was its own reward. Revenge doesn't need fireworks when rot spreads slow and deep. I remember the exact day it all came full circle. It was mid-January, the kind of day where everything feels soaked in cold. Not just the air, but the metal of the benches, the cracks in the pavement, even your breath. I was at the train station, headed to visit a friend out of town. Had a coffee in one hand and my earbuds in. I wasn't thinking about them at all, which was rare. Usually, part of me was quietly checking for updates, scanning names, waiting for another piece of fallout to hit. But that day, they were out of mind. Until I heard the voice. It wasn't loud. If anything, it barely rose above the shuffle of footsteps and the low murmur of morning commuters. But I recognized it. "Excuse me, sir? Can I ask something?" I turned around, and there she was. Erin. Except not really. The person in front of me wasn't the Erin I remembered. Her skin looked pale and dry. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes, once sharp, calculating, were swollen and dull. She wore an oversized coat that looked like it had been dragged out of a donation bin, and her hands were trembling. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. She hesitated, then took a half step closer. "I need to get to another state," she said. "I have no ID, no phone, no money. Please, I just need enough for a ticket." I stood there for a long time. Long enough that people started walking around us. Long enough that I could hear her breathing, sharp and fast, like even standing there was exhausting her. She didn't recognize me. Or maybe she did, but couldn't bring herself to admit it. Either way, she never said my name. And I never said hers. I just turned away. Not out of cruelty, or not just that, but because, in that moment, I realized something deeper. Some people don't deserve closure. They deserve silence. Not as punishment, but as a mirror. You break something, you don't get applause for gluing the pieces. You get to live with the cracks. As I stepped onto the train and sat by the window, I looked out once more. Erin was still standing there, hands in her sleeves, eyes darting, probably hoping someone else would stop. But no one did, and I never looked back again. After that morning at the train station, I thought I'd feel something dramatic. Relief, maybe. Triumph. Even pity. But instead, I just felt done. Not in the cliché way people say it when they're emotional. I mean actually finished. Like a book I'd shelved, a song I'd heard too many times to care if it played again. I never told anyone about what happened that morning. No screenshots. No poetic captions. No celebratory group chat messages. I just let the moment exist, unrecorded. Which, somehow, made it feel more real. More final. But endings aren't always one clean door slamming shut. Sometimes they echo. They send tremors long after you've walked away. Chris messaged me 2 months later. From a new account. No profile picture, no bio. Just a single message. "Was it you?" That's all it said. No context. No greeting. Just those 3 words. I didn't reply. I wondered how long he'd suspected. Maybe he pieced it together when Paul disappeared, and everything in his life unraveled. Maybe it was something in my eyes during that final moment in the bedroom. Or maybe he just couldn't believe his downfall came from a total stranger. It had to be personal. Apparently, the suspicion burned deep enough that he tried to do something about it. A few weeks after that message, I heard through someone, one of those friends who still watched Chris's slow collapse like a train wreck, that he'd filed a police report. He'd actually walked into a precinct with printouts, fake contracts, emails, screenshots, crypto receipts, everything. He told them he was scammed, that a man named Paul Grayson had committed fraud and ruined his life. I'm sure he looked confident, even proud, as he handed over his evidence. Like this would be his redemption arc. Like the truth would finally catch up. But the problem was, Paul Grayson didn't exist. The face on the profile was AI generated. The emails were hosted offshore. The video calls had been pre-recorded, the audio edited with pitch filters. The transactions were crypto. Untraceable. Clean. It wasn't just fake, it was built to vanish. The police took the report. They always do. But 2 officers eventually knocked on my door, asking casual questions. They didn't accuse. They didn't push. They asked if I knew Chris, and I said vaguely yes, from college, once. That we hadn't spoken in years. That I'd heard he was going through some kind of breakdown. They showed me a printed image. Paul's profile photo. I looked at it like it was a stranger. Shrugged. Said I'd never seen him before. Offered them coffee. Smiled like someone with nothing to hide. 15 minutes later, they left. Chris never got a follow-up. The case was quietly marked inactive a few weeks later. No arrest. No closure. Just an unanswered question that would eat at him longer than the scam itself. He had been robbed. But not by someone sloppy. He was outplayed by someone patient. And no one was coming to fix it. Meanwhile, Erin had vanished completely. Her last trace online was a comment under someone else's post, trying to sound supportive. It went ignored. No replies. No heart reacts. Like her name meant nothing anymore. A rumor floated around that she was staying at a relative's place, working nights at a gas station. Another said she was couch hopping, too anxious to apply for anything that required a background check. I didn't confirm either version. It didn't matter anymore. I had already won. I moved cities. Got a job in a quieter office. Nobody here knew anything about the past. I wasn't Bob the guy who got cheated on. I was just Bob. Quiet. Observant. Unbothered. There's a park I walk through some nights. There's this bench under a crooked lamppost where I sit with a warm drink and let the cold air sting a little. It reminds me I'm alive. Reminds me I got through it. I don't think about them often. But sometimes I do wonder. Do they ever tell the story? Do they twist it into something where they were tricked by some evil genius? Or do they leave it out completely, too ashamed to admit how easily it all fell apart? Either way, they don't matter anymore. Not really. Because if anyone ever asks me why I did it, I'll say this. Because they never thought I would. Because they believed I'd walk away, lick my wounds, and quietly disappear. Just like losers are supposed to. They never expected the quiet one to light the match. But they forget. It's always the quiet ones who watch the longest. And who burn the cleanest. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.